Square cakes look quite elegant. They can be a little bit tricky to decorate compared to a circle cake, but in this video, I'm going to show you how I ganached my square cake in preparation for covering it with fondant. Now, it's not perfect. I made some mistakes, but we're going to learn together. I'll show you how I went from this, my freshly baked cake. I'll show you how to get your ganache ready to be applied onto your cake. We're going to do the ganaching process together from the start to the finished product, like right here. Okay, let's get into it. First things first, you always want a flat surface. So if your cake is domed and not flat, trimming is absolutely essential. Now, this is just a quick bit of the video because I have a full video where I show you how to trim your cake. So I'll put the link at the top and in the description section. So make sure you start off with a flat cake. This is my chocolate ganache. I've left it overnight to set. I actually left it in the fridge, so you'll see that it's like rock hard. And I'm going to show you how to get your ganache ready to be applied to your cake. Now, if you don't know how to make milk chocolate ganache, again, I've got a video showing you how to make it. What you want to do with ganache is you want to heat it up, but you want to do that process really slowly. So you put it in your microwave and you heat it up in blast of about 15 seconds, taking it out each time and stirring it very, very well to get all that heat mixed up. And you'll start to see that the ganache starts to melt. And you keep doing this blast of 15 seconds. Bring it out. You'll start to see it becomes more runny, more liquidy. You kind of want to be aiming for a sort of what they call peanut butter consistency. And then what I've done behind the scenes, I've put the ganache and also my buttercream in a piping bag ready to go. So I'm setting up stuff. So that's my filling and the ganache. I've got a non-slip mat, which is on my turntable, and this is the cake board. I've also got some cling film because I'm going to be using acrylic boards to ganache my cake. So these are ganache plates, and they make the work of ganaching a square cake so much easier. Unless you're a pro, I think you'll really struggle if you don't use ganache plates. So ganache plates are just acrylic plates that will give you a template on which you will ganache your cake, and you'll see how they work later on. So the key thing with ganache plate, you want to use ganache plates that are slightly bigger than your cake. So my cake was I think it was a 6 inch. So my ganache plate is 6.25 inches, so slightly bigger than the cake. So put some buttercream on your cake board. This acts like a glue so that you can stick your cake firmly onto the cake board. And then once you've done that, you're going to put some filling, your buttercream. Again, if you don't know how to make delicious American buttercream, I've got you covered. I've got a video that shows you in detail how to make American buttercream. So apply the buttercream to the middle of your cake. Use an angled palette knife to smooth the buttercream all over your cake. I don't like too much buttercream filling, but if you do, go for it. But be careful, don't put too much, otherwise, too much buttercream will make your cake sleepy slidey as you decorate, and we don't really want that. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, can you hit the subscribe button now? Thank you. So this is the ganache plate, and I like to cover it with cling film because that makes it easier to take off later on. So I do both of them, just a layer of cling film, pull it really nice and tight and flush on the ganache plate just like that. Put some buttercream, again it acts like a glue, and then you put your cake board and your stacked cake on there. Look at it, make sure it's nice and centered. If you watch closely, you'll see that the ganache plates are have are longer or bigger than the cake. So that extra space is where we're going to put the ganache. And you'll see that working out when we start the decorating process. And again, do the same thing for the second ganache plate. If you don't have ganache plates, what you can also use thick cake boards or cake cards that are slightly bigger. They will work just as well. And actually, you might try that instead if you don't want to actually buy ganache plates. So I'm putting a layer of the ganache onto the top because so that when I take it off eventually, the top surface will be cover up. Spread it nicely, make sure it's nice and even. And then once we've done that, we're going to place the ganache plate onto the cake. Take your time in doing this bit nice and well because this is going to be the top of your cake, remember. So put the second ganache plate on. You have a look, make sure it's balanced, make sure it's even, make sure your cake is actually in the center of your cake board of the ganache plate before you start. You might need to squirt down low. Just take your time to get this bit right because once you start decorating um, you might be able to rectify. So I started off, with ganache in the piping bag to sort of apply it to the cake. One mistake I made is I totally underestimated just how much ganache square cakes take. Let me tell you, they use up a lot more ganache than compared to a circle cake. So be prepared and make sure that you make enough ganache. Now, I can't tell you exactly how much ganache like you need for your cake because it all depends on the size, the consistency of your ganache, and lots of other things. But make sure that you have enough. And with ganache, because you need it to set, you need to make it in advance. So make sure you have enough. So once you've applied your ganache to all sides of the cake, then you're going to use a smoother to basically smooth the buttercream on. Now, can you see how having the ganache plate acts like a guide? Because again, you're just smoothing on the edge between the two ganache plates. And then when you see any gaps, then you're going to just use your palette knife and some ganache to apply more ganache to those areas. And then you're going to repeat the process, taking your taking your smoother to smooth the surface. So here you can see that the ganache is slightly different consistency because I had to heat up more ganache and I've made it a little bit more liquidy than the original consistency, but it works quite well. And actually, for this bit, the thinner it is, the easier it is to smooth on, although it can get messy. And you're just going to repeat that whole process using a smoother. Now, this smoother I'm using is more a plastic flexible one, which I think works quite well with a square cake. But if you only have a rigid standard smoother, then that would work as well. And you just continue to do that whole process, filling the gaps, smoothing, until you are happy with your finished product. So now I'm going to put it in the fridge to chill. Put it in for about 30 minutes, an hour and a bit, so that your ganache is nice and firm. And then that way you can apply your next final coat onto the ganache to filling any imperfection. Okay, now so this was another batch of ganache that I had to make because I ran out. As you can see, it hasn't set properly. It's still a little bit liquidy. It still works, but it's a mess. So the moral of this bit is that make more ganache than you would for a circle cake of this side because square cakes, as beautiful as they use a lot more ganache. But actually, as you can see, it's not a difficult process. So again, we're doing the same thing like what we did earlier, applying ganache to the sides to filling the gap and just using a smoother to just smooth the cake. And then once we are done, we're going to then put it back into the fridge and allow it to set. So I tend to do that bit and leave it overnight till the next day so that the ganache is really, really nice and set before you then start to cover it with your fondant. In the past, I'd be in a rush because I would do the ganache on the same day that I wanted to put the fondant on the cake. And then I find that actually, if your ganache is not really firm as you are putting your fondant on, then things start to move, things start to slide, and it makes things a lot more difficult. So if you're going to be doing this process, try as much as possible to do it the day before, and then let it set for enough time. So here is the finished cake. It's looking smooth. Yes, it could be a little bit more smoother, but at this point, it was the middle of the night. It had enough. I put it in the fridge, and this is the next day. So to take off the ganache plate, now you can see why I like to put cling film on, because it's a layer in between the cake, so it's easy to peel off. I just use a sharp knife just to get an edge and then just lift it up. And then you can just use that sharp knife to smooth any imperfections. Hmm, well, yeah. Anyway, you get the point. I think I was a little bit too heavy-handed with the knife right there. But you can see that the cake is looking nice. You have a nice flat, smooth surface. And then when I decorate the cake with fondant, and yes, I will do a video showing you that whole process. You'll see how this worked to my advantage. Now, the next thing you're going to do is flip the cake so that you can take the second ganache plate off. This is my work surface board, but you could just use a larger cake board, and you just or something that big enough so that you can flip it, and then you can take off the second ganache plate. So again, just use a sharp knife, and you just want to just get in between that space between the cake board and the acrylic. And because your ganache is nice and set, look at that, I didn't even need to do anything, it just peels off. And this is your bottom, you know that because you see the cake board, and then what you've got to do is flip it back, and your cake is nice and ready to be decorated with fondant. Or if you're just going to leave it like this, then you can decorate it with your other decorations. So thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you have learned a thing or two or three or more of how to ganache a square cake the easy way. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you find it useful. As always, any comments will go in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Till next time I see you, happy baking, or should I also say happy cake decorating?